On the second day, Yang Wo still held the gorge. The five adversaries brought out food and ate with loud, smacking sounds. By now, Yang Wo was just burning with hunger. He looked back at Hong Qigong and saw that his posture hadn't changed in the slightest from the day before.
He started thinking to himself, if he were truly asleep, he might have turned over in his dreams. To be so motionless, he must be dead. If I wait another day, I'll be too weak from hunger to fight them. Maybe I should just charge out now and escape. So he slowly stood up, but then another thought came to him. He said he would sleep for 3 days and asked me to watch over him. I promised him. By the third day, Hong Qigong was still just as motionless as he'd been 2 days prior, and Yang Gui grew more suspicious. He's clearly dead, he thought, and it's just foolish of me to stay here and guard him. If I go hungry for another half a day, I won't even need these 5 men to kill me. I'll starve to death on my own. He grabbed a handful of snow from the rocks and swallowed it, trying to slightly ease the emptiness in his stomach.
He thought, I couldn't fulfill my duty to my parents, and my aunt is angry with me. I don't have any siblings, not even a good friend. The word righteousness, it means nothing to me. But this word trust, I have to hold on to it. He remembered a story his auntie Guo had told him of an ancient man named Wei Sheng who had promised to meet a woman under a bridge. The woman didn't arrive, but the river flooded. Unwilling to break his promise, Wei Sheng clung to a bridge pillar and drowned, and his name was praised for generations. And Yingguo thought, I have been despised by the world. If I don't keep this promise, I'll be even more contemptible. Even if it means my death, I will wait the full 3 days.
Another night and day passed in a flash. On the morning of the 4th day, Yang Guo approached Hong Qigong and checked his breathing. There was still none. He sighed, saddened, and bowed to him, saying, Senior Hong, I have fulfilled my 3-day promise. It is a pity you have passed away. I don't have the strength to protect your body, so I can only cast you into the deep valley to save you from dishonor. He lifted the body and started toward the narrow path. The 5 adversaries, thinking he was trying to escape, shouted and charged toward him. Yang Guo roared, placed Hong Qigong's body behind him, and yelled, I'll fight you to the death, and he rushed toward the first man.
He had only taken 2 steps when a figure vaulted over his head, landing right between him and the 5 men. That was a good sleep, the figure laughed. It was the 9-fingered beggar, Hong Qigong. Yang Gu was overjoyed, while the 5 men were terrified. It turned out Hong Qigong had only pretended to be dead to test the boy. Seeing that he had endured hunger and kept his promise for 3 days, Hong Qigong was pleased with his character. Now he stood majestically in the mountain pass. With a sweep of his left hand and a push of his right, he unleashed his masterpiece, the Dragon Regrets, from the dragon subduing 18 palms. The first adversary had no time to escape and could only try to block the blow, knowing it was futile.
Just as Hong Qigong was about to defeat the 5 men, he paused, intrigued by their master's techniques. And at that moment, a series of thuds echoed from behind a corner of the mountain. A figure appeared, moving upside down, walking on his hands, each hand holding a stone. It was the Western poison, Ouyang Feng. Yang Guo cried out in joy, Father! But Ouyang Feng, as if he hadn't heard him, leaped behind the 5 men and pressed his foot against their backs, sending a powerful wave of energy through them to counter Hong Qigong's force.
Hong Qigong was stunned to see Ouyang Feng. It had been over a decade since their last encounter. Ouyang Feng's mind was still clouded, but his martial arts, practiced in reverse from the 9 Yin manual, had only grown stronger and stranger. Hong Qigong, too, had advanced his own skills. After decades of rivalry, their powers were still evenly matched. They found themselves on Mount Hua for a 3rd time, and as their inner energies collided through the 5 adversaries, they remained deadlocked, neither gaining an advantage. After dispatching the 5 men, the 2 masters faced each other. Though his memory was gone, Ouyang Feng's deep-seated enmity for Hong Qigong remained. He let out a great roar and lunged. On a narrow path barely a foot wide, with a chasm on one side, they fought. Wind whipped their robes as their feet gripped the frozen ice. The duel was far more perilous than any on flat ground. Though older, their skills had reached a state of pure perfection. After just a dozen moves, they were both struck with admiration for the other. Old fellow, you're quite skilled, Ouyang Feng shouted. Hong Qigong laughed in reply. The stinking toad is not bad himself. They fought for 4 days, day and night, until both were completely exhausted. They clashed with fists, with wooden staffs, and with inner energy, but neither could claim victory.
Finally, their battle evolved. They could no longer rely on physical stamina, so they began a duel of pure technique and theory, a battle of the mind. Too weak to perform the moves themselves, they used Yanggu as their proxy. Hong Qigong would describe a move from his legendary dog-beating staff technique. Yanggu, a quick study, would perform it. Then Ouyang Feng would ponder, devise a counter, and instruct Yanggu on how to execute it. Their physical battle had become an intricate chess match of martial philosophy. For 3 days they continued move after brilliant move. Finally, Hong Qigong dictated the final variation of the final form of the dog-beating staff technique. It was called No Dogs Under Heaven. The move was so profound, so exquisite, that when performed it was as if the staff was everywhere at once, capable of striking down dozens of foes. Its subtlety represented the apex of martial arts. Ouyang Feng was left speechless, unable to find a counter. He spent the entire night in deep, restless thought, turning over every possibility. When the sun rose, Yang Guo was startled by a triumphant cry. "I have it! I have it!" It was Ouyang Feng, but the mental exertion had taken a tremendous toll. Overnight, his hair and beard had turned completely white, and he seemed to have aged a decade. After Yang Guo demonstrated Ouyang Feng's brilliant counter, the two old masters looked at each other. With a great shout, they lunged forward, pressing their palms together for one last ultimate test of inner power. But as they unleashed their energy, something bizarre occurred. Hong Qigong felt the immense power he projected begin to reverse, flowing back toward him. Ouyang Feng felt the same. Their energies were not clashing, they were turning back on themselves. They both cried out in astonishment, accusing the other of playing tricks. But they soon understood. The principle governing the 9-yin manual was when a thing reaches its limit, it reverts to its opposite. Hong Qigong's orthodox energy, pushed to its absolute peak, began to turn inverted. And Ouyang Feng's inverted energy, at its own zenith, began to turn orthodox. Their two forces, instead of fighting, began to merge into one harmonious whole, flowing between them, comforting and healing. At that moment, as their energies merged, Ouyang Feng's mind cleared. The fog of the past decade lifted, and his memories returned. The two men burst into laughter. "Old poison, Ouyang Feng," Hong Qigong shouted. "We took different paths, but ended up in the same place." He threw his arms around his old rival in a tight embrace. Ouyang Feng, his mind clear, laughed with him. The two white-haired men held each other, their laughter echoing through the valley. Then, slowly, the laughter faded until it stopped completely. They stood motionless. Yang Guo, watching in horror, called out to them, but there was no reply. When he touched them, he realized they were gone. After decades of bitter fighting, the northern beggar and the western poison had died at the same instant on the peak of Mount Hua, their lifelong enmity resolved in a final, shared laugh. Yang Guo waited by their bodies for 7 days and nights, hoping they were only pretending, but they were truly gone. He cried bitterly, then buried the two legendary masters side by side. He placed Hong Qigong's wine gourd and their wooden staffs in the graves with them. He saw their footprints from the duel, now frozen into the ice, and was struck by a profound sadness. He thought of their world-shaking skills, and how in the end it fell to a despised boy like him to bury them. What is glory? He wondered. What is prestige? It is all just a grand dream. As he descended the mountain, the resentment he had carried up with him was gone, replaced by a sense that the world was merely floating clouds. Whether people respected him or despised him, it no longer seemed to matter. He wandered into a desolate wilderness. In the distance, he saw a herd of wild horses galloping freely across the plains, their spirits untamed. It was a beautiful sight. But then he heard a sorrowful cry behind him. He turned to see a single emaciated horse, pulling a heavy cart of firewood. Its ribs protruded, its legs were like withered sticks, and its coat was matted and covered in the bloody marks of a whip. A brutish man sat on the cart, lashing the horse for moving too slowly. Having known so much cruelty himself, Yang Guo felt each blow as if it landed on his own skin. He strode into the road and stopped the man, taking his whip and freeing the horse from its harness. The horse, though weak, seemed intelligent. It neighed with joy and rubbed its head against Yang Guo's leg. Yang Guo patted its back.
Go, he said, pointing to the plains. You are free. But the horse was too weak. It ran a few paces, then collapsed. Yang Guo felt a great pity for the creature, a kinship of shared suffering. He lifted it to its feet, fed it, and said softly, "Horse, oh horse, from now on you will follow me." Under his care, the horse slowly regained its strength. It revealed a spirited, competitive personality, always needing to outrun any other animal on the road, a stubborn pride born from a life of humiliation.
This fiery temper suited young Guo well. The boy and the horse became inseparable friends. As they journeyed south, he found moments of joy in training his new companion, his youthful spirit reawakening. But these moments were always fleeting, always overshadowed by a persistent longing.
He would recall his time with Lu Wushuang or teasing Li Mo and smile to himself. But then, his thoughts would turn to Xiaolong Nu. He would wonder where she was and when they might meet again. And at those times, his heart would twist with 1,000 turns of longing.